For over 19 years, your eyes and ears on horse racing has been Tommy Walski's The Sport of King. On today's show, we'll preview the 2011 BC Derby. We'll look at the two BC Futurities. We'll look at buying a horse in the CTHS Sale. Our salute to the champions looks at the BC Derby champ. And now here he is, BC's ambassador to the world of horse racing, Mr. Tommy Walski.
Hello everybody, and what a weekend we have here at Hastings Racecourse. Sunday, 5 major stakes including the BC Oaks and also the BC Derby, the most prestigious race on the card. It's worth $200,000, and to get you in the groove or get you back on track, if you have never seen a Derby, we invited our resident handicapper, Mike Heads, to give you some insight and perhaps get you that winner. Mike, before we look at the BC Derby, which is rapidly approaching, let's look at the contenders from the Richmond Derby trial.
Yeah, that was a good race. It really stamped Northern Causeway. Veteran trainer Len Kazmersky brought him up. I thought he ran a big race against Glenn Todd and Pat Kinsella's Commander. Those two really did clear off. They had good trips, but they really demonstrated they're going to be a real force on September the 11th.
Northern Causeway by a half. Arraignment right there. Commander is now asked for run in third, followed by Talaki Paki, Stormy Canuck, Jump Up and Kiss Me, Pasquero and Goldfire. 6 furlongs, 112 flat, 3/16 to run. And Northern Causeway, Commander is let loose on the outside. Arraignment back into third. 1/8 of a mile to run. Northern Causeway and Commander, their heads apart. Arraignment in third. Jump Up and Kiss Me and Pasquero. Northern Causeway's on the inside. Commander's on the outside. Northern Causeway to score in the Derby trial. Commander will be second.
So Mike, let's look at those contenders.
Well, we'll start with Northern Causeway, he's a pretty nice horse. He showed it down south at Pleasanton. He really showed he was going to handle the regular dirt. Didn't know how much he really liked the poly track or the Tapeta at Golden Gate, but not a big horse. I couldn't believe it when I saw him. He's probably not even 15 hands. But he's a keg of dynamite. He's game. He showed it holding off Commander in the stretch. He looks like he's versatile, which is great because the race can come up so many different ways. If you're one-dimensional speed or closer type horses, those aren't necessarily the ones that win those kind of races. It's the ones that can adapt, and he's definitely a horse that can adapt to any situation. Anton Georgi, I'm sure, will come up and ride again, and you got a pretty classy old dude in Len Kazmersky training a pretty nice horse.
Look at Commander.
Yeah, big, huge horse. A total contrast to Northern Causeway. He was tiny. This guy's about 17.2. He's a big, heavy horse. Seemed to adapt to our track very nicely. I was pretty impressed with his run. Considering it was his first race in a while, I thought it was a very good effort against a very good Northern Causeway in the Derby trial, and it should set him up for a big effort.
Robbie Gilker trained Herbie D.
Yeah, he just finished winning via disqualification on BC Cup Day. Had to battle on the pace that day. He ended up losing to Jump Up and Kiss Me, but he was impeded. He's a horse that's rapidly improving. He does lack experience, but I think the talent is in the package. He's got it in him, but it's just a matter of if this is too much too soon. But we'll see on Sunday, September the 11th, because he is a nice quality horse. He proved that he doesn't need the lead to run a good race, but he is lacking some experience. He is giving up the experience edge to a lot of his rivals, but he is a very gifted individual.
Locally based, locally owned, Peter Redikoff's in his glory. How's he look?
Yeah, he's a nice colt too. Another one, I hate to be repetitive with the nice colts, but it shows you the contention in our Derby this year. He's a horse that had his winning streak snapped, unfortunately on a big day like the Canadian Derby day. He ran 4th that day, didn't seem to care for the track at all. It was a very dry, tiring track. I was out in Edmonton that afternoon, and that track isn't for every horse. He liked it the time before. He did win the Count Latham. He won his final start here at Hastings. He's shown he likes the cooking here in Vancouver too, so he's a nice horse, good quality connections, as you mentioned, Peter Redikoff, Craig McPherson. This colt's got a huge chance.
Mike, again, there's a lot of horses from outside the province here, several from Northern California and Washington. Northern Indy comes to mind.
Yeah, good run in the Canadian Derby. I didn't think he really cared for the track. He's definitely didn't care for the turns, and I think the turns here at Hastings will definitely favor him. Our turns are far more gradual. He's a big, huge horse. He's a one-run closer. Jerry Algeen, who's visited the winner's circle here at Hastings a lot of times, will be aboard, and that's a big plus in his corner. But he definitely looked the part. I think he just ran second in the Canadian Derby on talent alone, and the race did set him up pretty nicely. They went pretty fast early. But he's a horse that I think will run better in Vancouver than he did in Edmonton, just because of the turns. It seemed like he was struggling on the turns, spinning his wheels and losing ground, and in the straightaways he was rolling. But look for a better effort from Northern Indy. He's a class-type horse. He's every bit as good as Northern Causeway, who's also coming from Northern Cal. Eureka, nice easy win in the Emerald Derby. Certainly looked the part, coming from well off the pace. This will be his maiden voyage up north, though, to Hastings. He's going to need a pace on up front, and if he gets it, he could be a real contender, because he did beat a pretty quality field in Seattle a couple weeks back, and he's a horse coming into the race the right way. You want to come in winning and on a roll, and this colt's coming in on a roll. Line Change is a horse that got caught up on a very quick pace in the Canadian Derby. 47-3, 113-4. By Hastings standards is not very quick, but by Edmonton standards, going a mile and 3/8, that's rocking and rolling. And he put away all the speed. He held for third. I know he got beat double digit in lengths, but still he ran a big race. He came right here after the race. Trainer Terry Jordan sent him to John Morrison. He's been training here ever since. He certainly looks the part. He has some schooling issues he's going to have to overcome, because he was a little rude in the paddock in Edmonton, and he's got to not waste anything, because when you're doing that stuff, expanding energy, misbehaving in certain before the race even is on, it's definitely going to take away from your performance, and he definitely did that in Edmonton, and that's why I was so taken by him, that it's for him to still run third after all his theatrics in the paddock was very impressive. And you're cutting back to a mile and 1/8, and being a pace horse, I think it's going to help him a ton as well.
A couple of horses that are going to need a break in the Money One department.
Francer's Finest, Goldfire, those two will definitely need a break. And just to briefly touch on it, that only the top 12 can get in the race on daily racing form earnings at time of entry, and that's career earnings. So Francer's Finest and Goldfire, both nominated, are both going to need a break. They're going to need some of the higher money earners, one or two of them, to defect. But Francer's Finest certainly looked good in winning an allowance race a couple weeks back. Kind of stamped himself, got himself back in the Derby race anyway, because he'd kind of fallen off through the summer. He took a trip to Edmonton, didn't fare well back there. Took a little time getting back on track here. Finally come up with a big race, defeated Talaki Paki that day, and in a good time as well. So it kind of got him back on the Derby trail, but he's still going to need some breaks. As is a horse like Goldfire, who will need to, he's probably the lightest. He's going to need quite a few defections. He was a distant fourth behind Northern Causeway and Commander in the Derby trial. Didn't get any breaks early. The pace really didn't help him at all. But he's an unseasoned colt, just a maiden winner. But he's got some game, and if he gets in the race, he may make his presence felt. But he's still going to need some luck to get into the starting gate.
Another horse making the trip up from I-5 is Tim McCann's Winter Warlock.
Yeah, Winter Warlock, been running down in Seattle, been doing quite well there. And anytime Tim McCann brings a horse up here, you better take note. Always one of the leading, usually always the leading trainer down there in Seattle. He's won a pile of races. He's a very, very good horseman. And if he's entertaining coming up here, he's not coming up here because Vancouver's a beautiful city. He's coming up here. There's 200,000 reasons to come up here, and he's definitely going to bring a big contender.
Okay, Mike, I got to put you on the spot. For the record, no off the record, who do you like?
I like Northern Causeway. I was really impressed with him. He's a little horse with a big heart. This guy, he fought off that giant Commander in the Derby trial in his first race up here in Vancouver. He's stayed here since. He's worked back very well. The race seemed to take nothing out of him. He seems to be blossoming at the right time. He's a tractable speed type. I think he's a horse that's going to get in ahead of the deep closers and just in behind the speed, so he should get a perfect trip. William Anton Georgi is a very underrated rider. He's very good. He flies under the radar down in Northern Cal because, of course, of the Hall of Famer Russell Bays winning all the races there. But this William Anton Georgi is a really top-notch rider, and he seems to suit this Northern Causeway very well. I got to go Northern Causeway.
Time now for another Sport of Kings Derby moment.
Down the lane they come now. Vernon Invader by 2.5. Summer Prince, Bryson, Galliano, Jade Pagoda, and on the outside is Love All the Way. But it's Vernon Invader to win the Derby.
Sport of Kings is brought to you by the British Columbia Horsemen's Benevolent and Protection Association, the BCHBPA, Horsemen Helping Horsemen. Time now for another Sport of Kings Derby moment.
It's Roscoe Pito, Highest Slew, gaining ground at the rail is Grandanica, Old Texas, and Steady Smiler. Roscoe Pito takes both derbies, the Emerald and the BC Derby.
On Tuesday, if you have never been to a horse sale, they're quite a lot of fun. The CTHS annual yearling mix sale will be held in Langley at Thunderbird Park. And here's a little information that might help you if you want to buy a race horse.
The CTHS yearling and mix sale is the engine that drives thoroughbred racing at Hastings. This year, the sale will be on Tuesday, September 13th at Thunderbird Show Park in Langley. You don't have to be an expert to buy a horse. Here's trainer John Snow to give you some tips to get started in racing.
You know, there's a lot to learn at the sale, even if you're not so dead set on buying something. There's a lot to learn, about the buying process. You can talk to a trainer, follow him around if you want, see what he looks for, and there's just so much to learn in this business. It just keeps going and going. So.
And just how important is the sale to BC horse racing? Here's Brian Kozak.
The sale that's coming up next week is very important to the breeders. It'll give them all an opportunity to market their yearlings for this crop of foals, and they'll rely heavily on a good sale and the revenue that'll flow from it that would allow them to breed their mares back next year and keep playing the game.
And why buy a BC bred?
Well, BC breds are the best kept secret in BC. You make more money by racing them, and it's what keeps this whole industry flowing in British Columbia.
Let's hook up with trainer Jerome Partington at a recent sale to see just what to look for.
Well, first of all, you have to work within a budget. You have to know what your means are before you come out and basically stick with them. You have to go along with a knowledgeable trainer and stick with his wishes basically when you go to look for the horse. And when you find one you like and see, it could be a few that you may like and see, then it'll be time to go over to the auction ring and maybe place a bid. When you're looking through the catalog, of course, the more black type, the better. For instance, as you see black type on this type of mare here, means that they have been a stakes winner in their career. And that's basically it. But like I say, once again, you might have to bring a little more money if you want to go for those type of horses. We've chosen this horse because his dam, meaning his mother, is unproven right now as a producer, yet the pedigree shows a lot of promise. You know, you look at this horse, he has a very nice neck, he's manageable to handle, he has a nice back end, meaning his engine back there, the rear end, that's where a horse gets all their drive from and their power from, is off their hind end. And, but he's a baby, and he still looks like a baby. But when you try to buy a horse at this age, you're trying to take an imaginary picture of what he'll look like a year from now. Taking an imaginary photo in your mind saying, boy, when that front end catches up to that back end on the horse, this might be a pretty good looking dude. And it might fall into the price range that we're looking to buy at. And this would be a prime example of a horse that we're going to probably take a bid on. Let's take a look at hip number 80. And here we see by Southern Halo, a son of Halo, some very prominent breeding from the United States, out of a Stormbird mare, rarely seen around these parts. Very rarely seen, a Stormbird mare. Stormbird, one of the great champions from the 1980s. She's Breeders' Cup nominated off of her pedigree, and it's a very interesting horse because it's something that we don't see a lot of here, this type of breeding. With pedigree like this filly will be a welcome addition at some point, hopefully, to the broodmare band here in British Columbia, which will further the breeding here in our province. Now, what price range this horse may fall into, that'll be in the hands of the bidders, basically, but based on its breeding, it'll probably go for a pretty fair dollar. Well, let's take a look at this one. This is hip number 52, and he's a dark bay or brown colt who happens to be a half-brother to one of the real stars of racing a few years ago here at Hastings, Queen of My Nights. She was what we're all looking for here, which is she was a Sadie Diamond Futurity winner. Sure is nice to dream that maybe if we did good someday, we might be able to come and bid on a horse like this one.
Mark it on your calendar, folks. Tuesday, September 13th at 2 p.m. at Thunderbird Show Park in Langley. Viewing is available on Monday at